and welcome to the Student Ministry Conversations podcast with your hosts, Brent Aiken, David Pruitt, and Russell Martin. This podcast is all about equipping, encouraging, and inspiring youth pastors weekly with topics that are brought to the table by youth pastors from all over the world. And now, here's your host for this week, Brent Aiken. Hey, and welcome to the podcast. If this is your first time listening to us, we want to welcome you and invite you over to our website, studentministryconversations.org, where you can find all of our previous episodes, show notes, and blog articles. Our goal is that you are inspired, encouraged, and the things that you hear on this podcast can equip you to be a better student pastor for the church that you're serving in. Now, today we are sitting down with Shawn Kirkland. Shawn is a fellow youth pastor in the Abilene area, but I don't want to steal anything else from him. Shawn, start off with telling us where you serve, how long you've been in youth ministry, family, anything else you want to share.
So yeah, I have been the youth pastor here at New Hope Church just about over a year. We just hit 1 year in February, but I've been in youth ministry since 2019. When I was engaged to my wife back in 2019, I took my first youth pastor job in Bowie, Texas. We were there for just about 3 years. And got to see God move and change some lives. And after that, we knew that our time was coming to an end. And I was already working part-time with Fellowship of Christian Athletes, so I became a full-time missionary with them for 16 months in Wichita Falls, Texas. And so I was just on the campus all the time with coaches, with athletes, starting clubs. And after about 16 months there, we knew that God was calling us back into youth ministry. And so we prayed, we fasted, and God led us to Abilene, Texas. And we've been loving it. So we've been here since.
That's awesome. Yeah. Like you said, it's been about a year. We've had some opportunities to catch coffee, eat lunch together. And now there's something that it's our conversation for today, but now there's something else that's kind of starting that I'm excited about personally, but you've kind of been the guy to spearhead it, and it's something that you're passionate about speaking on. So why don't we go ahead and jump into the conversation? And today we're talking about how to start a campus ministry, or how to allow students to start a campus ministry, and how to be there working from the sideline or working from the background, so to speak, and equipping these students to make sure that they have everything they need in order to get a student-led campus ministry going. And so, man, just, dude, like, first off, give a little backstory on how the one that your youth student is starting right now, how that came to be, and then we can kind of just jump into it.
Yeah. So we got a few, we call them Jesus clubs. And what it is it's students leading their clubs. It's a little different than an FCA because FCA relies a little bit more on the coach. This is solely on the students. The students, they go get a room, they go get a sponsor, and they start a club on their campus. And so something we've been pushing even from our youth ministry is, and we want to see the church planted on the campus. We believe that God can change lives in the locker room and a hallway just like he could in a church altar. And so we've been pushing this. And honestly, to go all the way back, it kind of starts with my backstory. When I was 15, I was called to ministry, and I was just on fire. I went from the worst kid in my middle school to I wanted to be a youth pastor. And so the first day of my freshman year, I was just on fire. My mission was to see my school come to know Jesus. And I didn't really have a youth pastor at the time. And so my heart was like, I don't know how, but I'm going to do whatever it takes to see my school won over for Jesus. So even throughout my time in high school, I'd started playing in FCAs and clubs and was the prayer guy on my football team. And by the time my senior year, and I got to see over 100 of my friends give their life to Christ. And that's kind of like where this fire started in me. And so throughout my youth pastor career, I've been very passionate about finding a way to empower students to plant the school or the church on the campus, because I saw, even as a teenager myself, what could happen if you committed yourself to it. And so it kind of started to where we were just doing a bunch of FCA huddles and clubs, and had a lot of cool, awesome coaches come by and help me. But what we've started to realize is that when we empower students to take a club and lead it, man, sometimes the outcome is, man, it's incredible. And so, yeah, we got a student right now that's partnering with one of Brent's students, and where they're starting a Jesus Club at Wiley High School, and they're going to be starting it this upcoming Monday. And we have several others in our youth ministry that have partnered with other students from other youth ministries to plant these clubs. And that's the cool thing about this is it's not just a specific youth ministry thing. It's friends partnering with friends from different churches and planning these clubs. And man, it's been cool. I've been blessed to see students lead their peers to Christ on their campus. Just from stepping out in faith of starting a Bible study or just starting a prayer group. And so really what it is, we just give these students a board, and we're like, hey, create we give them these kind of like boundaries to set it up in. And it's been cool. So we just empower students to plant the church on their campus, to not rely on a youth pastor or a coach or a teacher to do it. But hey, this is your school. This is your friends. This is your responsibility. And it's been cool to see some of these students step up and take it. So.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think there's so many different ways that we can go with this conversation, but if you are a youth pastor listening to this, I mean, like, this is the bread and butter of, like, if I could get anything started other than like bringing people, like allowing kids to encounter Jesus, is it's encounter, like allowing and equipping students to be the ones that are doing the discipling, be the ones that are doing the evangelism. And so this is a really, really awesome thing to see. It's an awesome thing to just kind of be in the background watching personally, as these couple students are on fire, and they absolutely want to see this thing take off, and their enthusiasm and energy has been infectious. And so with that, I guess from a youth pastor that's listening to this, I kind of want to gear this conversation in the mindset of maybe some questions that they would ask. First off, how did you know that this student was the right one, or did you pick this student, or have you kind of seen this develop, or did this student come to you in regards to getting this started?
Man, this student came to me. We just gave an opportunity at one of our youth services that, hey, if you feel like taking ownership of your faith, standing and making a difference on your campus, man, like step up and do something. We kind of introduced this Jesus Club board and said, hey, if you're interested, here's the step. It's not as difficult as you think it is, and so she was one of several students that said yes to the call. And so I don't go about picking because the truth is it's their campus, it's their friends. And I've made the mistake many times where I've underestimated students and then they've just blown my mind from just like they step out in obedience and what God uses them from there is amazing. So no, I didn't pick this student. I gave the opportunity, and when she said yes, I helped. And really what it was is I just asked her a lot of questions. I let her think. I let her fill out this board. It wasn't me filling it out for her. And so I was just mentoring through the process. But yeah, she stepped up, and yeah, it's been all her really. So.
That's awesome. And so you've referenced this Jesus board or something like that a couple times. What exactly are you talking about there when it comes to like you helping her fill this out and like her coming up with all the ideas and stuff? What is this Jesus um, group board?
Yeah, so the thing is, it's just called Jesus Clubs. I didn't come up with the idea. Someone I knew came up with the idea. They work for a ministry called Youth Alive, and so I was just part of the one of the youth pastors that just got my hands on it and got coached up as a youth pastor on how I can coach up students to take this. And so it's really as simple. I even got it on my board back here where they have to come up with the why of why they want to start a club on their campus. And from there, they come up with the plan, the day, the time, the classroom, the target audience. Are you wanting to reach your softball team? Is it your choir group? Is it all the girls in your grade? Is it all the guys in your grade? Like, well, what's your target audience? After they come up with the plan, they come up with the team who's their core leader, their champion. Their champion is someone like me or Brent, their youth pastor, they're one of their youth leaders, a teacher or coach on their campus. And that's just checking in on them, seeing if they need anything. Like, hey, can I bring donuts? How can I be praying for y'all this week? Do you need a graphic? Whatever it is. So they develop a team of other students that are going to do this with them, because I encourage all students, don't do this alone. Bring a team with you. Your team doesn't have to be in this youth group, but you have to have a team with you. And so they come up with a team. They come up with a champion, a principal. Who's their principal? Who's going to be their sponsor? Who's going to be their teacher sponsor in that room? They don't need a teacher to lead it. They just need a teacher that will be there present. That's all they need. And so then they come up with roles, and then we challenge them to dream big. So we have a section on there. It's called the God Dream. It says, I pray that God would build up a community of blank students by blank, so that more people can know Jesus and make him known. So it's like, I have a dream that there will be a community of 100 students by the end of the school year, so that Jesus could be made known. So we just challenge them to dream and to dream big. And after that, there's a section on there for next steps. What's their next step? Is it a meeting with the principal? And that's what these girls did. They went and met with their principal, which, man, is bold. It's bold to call a meeting with their principal and say, hey, I want to start this club on campus, whether you know what your principal is going to say or not. And it's still pretty bold for as a student to be able to set up a meeting like that. And so so we just give them a board. It's just step by step. Hey, what do you need to do? You need a plan. You need a team. What's your dream? And what are your next steps going from here? So.
Yeah, which, I mean, those are all, questions that I believe anybody would ask, even when we as youth pastors are looking into new ministry opportunities or new events or anything like that. It's like, hey, what's the goal with this? And so essentially you're just walking through the planning process of how to do it with these students. And so I guess, obviously the board is really, really cool. And with that, we will definitely include a link to the board or the Youth Alive contact information where you can get access to it as well. But like Shawn was saying, it's really not much to it. It's just helping them and guiding them answer the simple questions and the basic questions of how they would go about getting this done and making sure that all the gaps are filled. And so from the outside looking in on this, Shawn had done a majority of the legwork before I even knew this was a thing. And I got drug into the conversation, and I was like, hey, make sure you think about this, make sure you think about this, make sure you think about this. And the girls were already like, oh yeah, that's fine. We've talked through all this already with Shawn. And it was all these questions that I was just like, okay, like, we need to make sure that y'all have a plan. You need to make sure that you have a structure for how you're going to do things. What happens if this person shows up? What happens if 100 people show up? Kind of thing like that. And so just having these conversations to where the students can actually just sit down and think through, but still plan their group on their own are really, really important. And so I guess my next question would be, obviously the goal for this would be for them to have students come and students make Jesus known, students come to Jesus, all these different things. But so how we've established the groundwork. We've established that, hey, this group is going to take place. The girls have already met with the principal. The principal approved the student organization. They found a teacher. They found a room. Everything, like you said, they're starting next Monday. What is your responsibility as the youth pastor now? And how are you still in the picture as far as equipping and encouraging and uplifting these girls to do what they're doing on their campus?
Yeah, I think that's really, you kind of already said it. It's just like, man, really my goal now is just to be checking in, encouraging, and whatever they need to be equipped with, we equip it. So we do trainings, and the goal and my heart too is that like these trainings become citywide, because we tell our students all the time, it's not just a New Hope thing. This is a Jesus thing. This is a kingdom thing. And that's what has me so excited about this group in particular, is because there's I think three different youth groups represented in leadership, and that's pretty cool. But my goal right now is I'm going to encourage them. Like with what you said, it's like, man, if one person shows up or 100 people show up. So if 100 people show up, okay, there might be some things I need to help equip with. All right, okay, I'll bring some donuts. I'll do this. I'll do that. But my goal is, man, I think a successful Jesus Club for me is I never speak at one. They don't necessarily know who I am, but the face is constantly the students. And
That's
so
good.
even if it's helping students find curriculum that they can teach, and so I'm just helping them and training them and making sure that they're not teaching blasphemy or anything like that. It just I'm just helping and encouraging from this point. And so the more hidden I am, the more successful the Jesus Club is in my book, and that's what I love about this. It's completely student led. It's students taking their faith into their own hands, and doing this for their peers. And so yeah, so from now on, it's just checking in. It's just a text message. Y'all need anything? How can I be praying for y'all this week? Tell me a victory. What's something going great? What's something that's a struggle right now? And really, the key is it's just if they stick with it, there will be fruit with it. I've seen different Jesus clubs over the years. Even at my first youth pastor spot, we did this, and man, we had some awesome core high school kids go and plant a club, and they started hot, and then they just kind of like let it fall apart, because they just didn't stay with it. They weren't trying to add to it. But then I remember one of the greatest Jesus clubs I ever saw was a sixth grade girl. She said that she was going to start a Jesus club at on Fridays after school, and I was like, just for girls. She was like, it's going to be only for girls. It's going to be Fridays. It's going to be after school. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is not going to go good. But I'm like, hey, if you're really wanting to do this, go for it. Go for it. Well,
Yeah.
her first one, there was four that showed up and two left in the middle of it. And I was just like, oh man, like, this, I don't see how this, but she kept with it and she kept with it. And over time, she saw this grow into a group of 20 plus girls. And what she started to see was girls that have never gone to church before started showing up at this Jesus Club after school on Fridays.
That's
And
awesome.
I'm not even kidding, man. We saw 10 girls give their life to Christ through this Jesus Club, through this sixth grade girl saying yes to the call that God had placed on her life. We saw
That's
girls that
awesome.
they would have they had worship there, and it was played through a little Bluetooth microphone speaker, as cringy as it gets, but they did it and they worshiped, and girls would cry, and they're like, man, like I've never felt this way before. They would show up an hour early to our youth service. They're like, I went to this Jesus club put on by this girl, and I just like I want to give my life to Christ. I don't know how to do this. Service hasn't even started yet, and we saw that from a sixth grade girl who said yes to obedience of what God had called her to do. And so what is a successful Jesus club? It's someone who sticks with it, whether it's there's only a little bit of people showing up, or if it's a bunch. But man, I've seen God do some pretty amazing things through some kids that just said yes. And so since that moment, I never underestimate a student anymore. I'm like, if God's calling you, hey, how can I help you?
Yeah, that's awesome. No, and I definitely have heard some stories as well that are just mind blowing when it comes. But when you were talking about the first event and how two people left in the middle of it, it made me think back to high school. We had a girl, and this isn't like Jesus group or anything related at all, but I played golf my senior year, and we had a freshman on varsity that on the girls varsity team, and her first tournament ever, first hole, she quadruple bogeyed the first hole. And I remember the golf coach talking about it later, and she's saying like, I was just like begging and pleading with her from like walking from hole one to hole two on the mindset of like, oh, just please don't quit, please don't quit, please don't quit. I know it'll get better, it'll get better, it'll get better. And then no kidding, the second hole she aced it, hole in one.
Man,
And it was
wow.
like just the mindset of behind it of like sometimes we
Yeah.
give up on things long before we get started,
Mm.
and sometimes like it all we need to do is be there and be the ones that are providing the encouragement, be the ones
Mhm.
that are providing resources, like you said, because they're going to kill it at some point. They're going to do something that is just remarkable, especially if God's called them and they're accepting that call. And so that's the beauty of kind of being the youth pastor in the circumstances. We kind of just get to sit back and watch,
Yeah.
but we get to be the person cheering from the sidelines saying, "You are doing fantastic. This is so great. Like, let me be your support person as much as I possibly can." And like you said, whether that be helping them find curriculum, whether that be answering questions that they might not have an answer for, whether that be signing up to bring donuts to a meeting,
Yeah.
however, whatever, what a easy and awesome way um, to really live out the purpose of discipleship. We have had opportunities to pour into these students, and now it's their turn to go pour into other students, and we kind of just get to sit back and watch, and support the ones that are taking it seriously and going after it with everything they have. And it's a really, really entertaining thing to do. And so I guess my last thing is how with especially with this Jesus Club, obviously, for those listening, we are this episode's airing on uh, March 21st. And so we're recording this just a few days before, but obviously it's middle of March. We just got right off of spring break. And one of the big looming things that's going to happen is, and hey, like 2 months, they're out for the summer.
Mhm.
So, like, how do you work to support these students and encourage them to make this not something that lasts 2 months? And how do you encourage your students to uh, continue on through the summer, or maybe just make it to where like their presence hits strong in the coming August at school? How do you support from afar, especially when they're not actually having that time to meet during a Jesus Club?
Yeah. And I think it's just, even just sitting down with some of these, Jesus Club owners and hearing their heart of what they want to see continue happen. And so, I mean, I would love it. I would love it if some of these people came up to me and said, "Hey, we're going to continue to meet through the summer and we're going to meet at the coffee shop or whatever it is." And if they do that, then man, that's awesome. If not, they take a break for the summer. That's cool too. Then my focus would be like, okay, how many trainings can we get throughout the summer to where it's fresh on their mind, it's not forgotten about, and just them reminding like, hey, you're still called now. And I think summer kind of takes care of itself because in the youth ministry world, like we got the hangouts and then we got camp, and then everybody coming back from camp is just on fire. And so I think it's looking for some of those like high moments throughout the summer, and then okay, how do we continue to fan the flame of what was already there during the school year? Because I feel like sometimes the toughest thing, the easiest thing for me always as a youth pastor is when I come back from camp, I have a ton of kids on fire for Jesus right when we get back from camp. So how am I fanning that flame? Or maybe even taking some of those kids that were leading Jesus clubs during the school year, and now they're pouring in to other students that want to start one as well. And so we'll do trainings and we'll really push it going into the next school year too. And just like, hey, if you had a club, like you already got the presence, you already got the social media, like you already got all that going on, you already know how to do this, you've done this once, now let's go do it again and let's do it even better. And so I think it's just kind of finding those high spots throughout the summer, and figuring out, hey, how do I continue to fan the flame? Like I said though, if we have students who are like, hey, we're going to continue to meet, like or I have a football player that's like, hey, like, after off season workouts, we're going to have a Bible study. If stuff like that happens, I mean, I'd be one really excited youth pastor. That would be amazing to hear. And so
Heck yeah.
I'd love to see stuff like that happen. If they take a break, we'll figure out ways to fan the flame by doing trainings. And one of those things is right when we get back from camp. We get back from camp like probably about 4 or 5 weeks before school goes back into motion. So just right around then, we'll do another training. We'll onboard more students, and now we have more students that say, "Hey, I have an experience. I have 2 months experience of what it looks like to lead a club on my campus." Well, now it's finding those students and man, how can we get those students to pour into some of these younger students that never have before? And so I think it's
Yeah.
just finding stuff like that.
No, that's awesome. And so, obviously, as we are kind of rounding out the conversation, do you have anything else as far as just words of advice or words of encouragement you would say to a youth pastor that's trying to get this started? And then also just any last thoughts or comments as far as our conversation today?
Yeah, I think if like when I think about Jesus clubs and how it's all student led, and I think if we want to see the most impact, us as youth pastors, I had to learn this at one time too. It's not about us. It's about empowering them. Like our job is to equip the saints, and so it's not about us. And I've seen a time early on my youth pastor career where when I was doing FCAs and I was speaking every single week, and that wasn't me empowering my students. That was me just having a second youth group.
Yeah.
I've been the guy on the sidelines. With football teams, I love hanging out with football teams every season, and so I mean, and I do that, and I'll continue to do that just because that's just one of my passions, and I love being a FCA chaplain for a football team. But man, I've seen more students lead their friends to Christ in a semester than what it took me 3 years to do,
Yeah.
because they have more buy-in with their friends. And so I just say my word of advice is, man, even you may be able to, as a youth pastor, you may be able to speak better than your students. You may know how to put these things better, but if we're not empowering them to do it, then we're missing the point. Um,
Yeah.
they their students aren't their peers aren't going to judge them on if they can preach the perfect sermon and not go the whole time without stuttering or looking at their notes.
Yeah.
I say it's the opposite. Students have more respect for a student that will stand up in front of their peers and speak
Yeah.
than some youth pastor that goes onto a campus and speaks to the group. And so I think I love being on the campus, but if I'm constantly on the campus and I'm never empowering my students to do something on the campus, I'm missing the point. And so I
Sure.
think we just have to get back into the mindset of, hey, it's not about us. They may not do things that our students may not be as polished as we are, from our, few years of Bible school and all that. But like, man, it's our job to help them. And so
Yeah.
I think the more clubs we see in being led by students and less by teachers and youth pastors, I think we're going to start to see a real move of God in our schools when it's the students leading the way, not necessarily the youth pastor.
Yeah.
So
No, very much, and that's awesome. I totally agree. One of my passions is equipping students to lead out and lead well, and part of that is them getting out into the community and doing that. And
yeah,
so with that, man, what a great conversation. What a honestly an easy thing to do when it comes down to it.
yeah,
That we really, really don't take time to invest in very often. And so, Jesus centered or Jesus focused groups on your students' campuses. Really, really easy. Like I said, we will have all the stuff in the show notes so you can go check that out and download the little Jesus page as well so you can walk through this with students in your program. But that is all we have for the show. If you are a frequent listener of our podcast, all we ask is that you do your part to get our podcast out to the greater student ministry audience. You can share our podcast with your youth pastor friends on social media or tag a specific episode that really stood out to you. Either way, be sure to tag us in the post on your favorite platform by using @TalkStudentMen. And finally, if you'd like to be like Shawn and be on the show in the future, reach out to us on social media @TalkStudentMen or send us an email, podcast@studentministryconversations.org, and we'd love to set up a time that you can come on the show with us. But man, Shawn, great conversation. Love you, buddy. This has been a lot of fun. Really excited to see this take off and to see our students hit the ground running with this. During our conversation, the girl that's in my youth group has been texting nonstop, which is really, really great. I love it. And I am sure that man, we're gonna see some great things come from this, and it is all because of the students that are on fire for Jesus. So thank you for listening to this episode, and we hope that you have a great week, and we will see you for next week's episode.